chat together, okay? Let's have a quick chat, shall we? Hi, everyone. Welcome. Story time with Draven. So, I'm going to tell you a story about Judy's. So, my mom's name was Judy. Has absolutely no connection to the story. I'm just pointing that out. Because any of you happen to know my mom's name was Judy. So, years ago, my buddy Mike got married. Mike has been my best friend since the 2nd grade. He came down here, was in both of my weddings. I went up and I was in his wedding. We are close still. Mike's the guy who taught me how to play D&D. Mike invited me up for his wedding, of course, and I get up there. And where he lives and where everything's going on is about 30 minutes from my grandparents' place. And so I make arrangements to stay at my grandparents' place. They're happy to have me stay. I hadn't been up there in years. Gave me a place to stay, free breakfast, which was nice, and I got to see some family around there as well. But I spent almost the whole trip with Mike and his friends. But over those days, every time I run into somebody, I'd be like, hey, how's it going? They always say the same thing. Hey, where are you staying? I'm like, I'm staying at my grandparents' place in Gobles. Gobles was the little town they were in. And they're like, oh, yeah, have you been to Judy's? Now, Judy's is a little restaurant, kind of a country restaurant, you know, kind of in the middle, kind of no real few buildings around it, but not a whole lot. But it was like a breakfast place mostly, but they had lunch too. It was like a little bit of a buffet, but it was a home cooking kind of place, right? And I've been there a few times, like, no, I haven't been. I maybe hit it on the way there. And I remember the food being okay, but it wasn't that good. But no matter where I went, no matter who I talked to, people kept asking me the same thing. Really, have you been to Judy's yet? I'm like, is their food gotten way better? Like, that's the only thing I can think of at this point. I'm like, no, I may hit it before I head back to the United States. I haven't decided yet. It depends on my schedule. Like, oh, you should totally check it out. I'm like, okay, well, maybe, you know. So we get to the wedding. The wedding happens. We're at the reception. People are dancing, music playing, everybody's drinking. I'm drinking. We're having a good time. And I'm sitting at a table with Mike's mom, sister, and a couple other people. And his mom asked me, hey, where are you staying while you're down here? It's the first time I'd seen her was at the wedding. And she's like, I'm staying at my grandparents' place. And she knows where that is. They're like, oh, have you been to Judy's yet? And I'm like, okay, I got to ask. Is their food way better than it used to be? And she goes, what do you mean? Like I said, I was there a couple times as a kid before we moved to the United States. But every single person I've talked to has asked me, hey, man, have you been to Judy's yet? And I've never had a group of people so diverse talk about the same restaurant so many times. And she looks at me and she goes, Kirk, it's a strip club now. It's not a restaurant anymore. That's a strip club. And I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me? I would have totally checked out Judy's. I had no idea. So to change from a restaurant to a sports bar strip club. Interesting, kind of funny, didn't know. So, wedding ends, I go home, I crash. The next day, Mike and his off to the honeymoon and such, they go off to do their things. I'm chilling at my grandparents' place. And I went around for a few hours, went around by like my old elementary school, because I hadn't been there, you know, like 15 years, 20 years. And I show up and I'm like, hey, it's in the summer. I'm like, school's not in, but somebody was there. I'm like, hate to bother you, knock. Is there any way I could look around, take up pictures? I used to be a student here. I moved to the United States. I haven't been back here in a long time. And they're like, yeah, actually, you picked the best time to come in. The school's being torn down at the end of the summer. They're putting like a business here or something like that, which is depressing to me. But I got to go in and take up pictures and look around it one last time, which was kind of cool. And I lived in a very small farming community, like 400 people. And there was another small community 10 minutes away. So what they did is build just one big school to cover all the small communities. Because my school was kindergarten to 8th grade, 15, 20 kids per class. It was not a big school. So it made sense to make a bigger one and bring everybody together because the classes were just so small in each of the schools. So I do that. I take my pictures and I'm back at my grandparents' house. And I'm like, I'm going to drive home tonight. And I drive... Whenever I cross the border, I do it in the middle of the night. And I do that because the border historically always has long lines. If you cross in the middle of the night, you're a little bit more likely to get hit by security, but you're less likely to have to sit there for hours and hours. So I'm like, I'm going to sleep some and then I'm going to go. I'm like, but I'm going to go into town first and stock up on Canadian snacks, stuff I can't get in the States, so I can bring them down here and share them with friends and such and let them try cool things they've never had. So I'm doing all that. I'm on my way back, and here I am passing Judy's. And I'm like, maybe I'll stop by Judy's for a few minutes. You know, get a drink or something. So I show up and I go in. As soon as you walk in the doors, you're like in a little hallway, and then you go left or right through more doors, and then you're inside the place. And it says right on the wall in huge letters, no crew colors. That means you do not wear your hockey jerseys in there because people will get into fights. Canada. So I go in, and this was 50% strip club, 50% sports bar. There's pool tables, sports on all the TVs and stuff. So I go in, I sit down at the bar, and I'm talking to the lady. She's got a German accent. Nice lady, older lady. I'm chatting with her, and she's like, I've never seen you in here before. And I'm like, well, I tell her the same story I've told you. Everybody told me I should come by because I grew up here, but I'm back for the first time in 20 years. She got a big kick out of that I didn't know. And, same way I've told the story to you guys. And so she's like, yeah, we bought it about 8 years ago. And, we weren't really restaurant people. We wanted to convert it into a bar. And it started as a sports bar. And then, the opportunity came in to expand into a strip club, and business boomed after we started that. So that's what we've stayed at. While this is going on, there's several people dancing, several people giving money, all the classic strip club stuff. Some of you may have never been there. I've only been to probably about 1,000. And we'll skip past that part. It's not important. Many of them. But anyways, I was there. And the girls walking around. Now, the first rule of going to a strip club has nothing to do with Fight Club. This is actually the first rule. Never accept a dance from the first person who asks if you want one. Because there's going to be people on stage, people sit with people, and then you got your roamers, the ones that are walking around looking to try to get you to buy them a drink or buy a private dance. The reason they want you to buy them a drink is because they'll take one sip of it, it'll be half watered down, and then when they have to go up on stage, the waitress will come by, grab that thing quick as a whistle, come back and like, oh, my drink's gone. Can I have another one? Because they get half of the profit for the drinks. They want you to buy them as many drinks, but they're not drinking them all. The waiters and waitresses know this. They're watching for them to leave the table so they can snatch up that drink like it's empty. This is a tutorial. I'm training you as well as entertaining you. Bear with me. So, of course, the first one comes around. She's probably 10 to 12 years older than myself. I'm like, I appreciate that. I'm just here for a drink right now. And I'm scoping out. I have limited funds. I've been there for a week. I spent a bunch of money. I'm like, if I'm going to get a dance from someone, I'm going to pick someone that I think is worth my time and my money. You got to be careful. Shop, my friends. Shop. So as I'm shopping, I see two. I'm like, okay, whichever one of these two comes near me first, that's who I'm going to snag my drink from. Or I'll get her a drink, right? That's who I'll snag my dance from. Then I'm going to head back, crash out, and then go back to the United States, right? No big deal. So, sure enough, one of the girls comes by, chats me up for a minute. I'm like, hey, pretty good. She's like, would you like a dance? I'm like, sure. How much? She gives me the price. I'm like, it's actually pretty cheap. Yes, I would. That's fine. She said, excellent, follow me. So she followed me through this hallway, this doorway down a hallway, and you get to what basically I like to call the cubicles of sin. Imagine a cubicle, right? Like a desk would be in, but instead a love seat. A little bit wider than a chair, not as big as a full-size couch. And the cubicles are back to back, so they're all facing outwards. So security can walk by and around, make sure nobody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and making sure at the same time that the employees are safe from people being inappropriate. Not a bad design, very good idea. Look at there, sit me down in my cubicle of sin. I sit down there. And then she, starts preparing for a dance. I'm just kind of sitting back. And she takes out a little bottle of hand sanitizer. Puts some in her hands, starts going like this. I'm like, okay. And then she holds out the bottle for me. Now, this is like 8 years ago. This is long before anything COVID, okay? But she holds out the bottle for me, and I'm like, well, that's awfully nice of you. Thank you. That's awfully polite. Wow, that's great. Thank you. So I sit back, as you do, and I put my hands on the back of the couch. Because you can. Somebody walks by, sees you trying to touch something, you can get in trouble. So I'm sitting back, hands on the couch. She proceeds to give me a private dance. It was good. But she's talking to me while she's doing it, and she's chatting me up and so on. I think I got 3 dances. So that's what I planned. I'm going to get 3 dances from the same girl. Each one lasts like 5 minutes. I'm back there 15 minutes and I leave. And I wanted to bounce around. If I find somebody I like, throw the money at that same part. I'm like, one another one? Sure. One another one? Sure. We get the first one. Still the first dance. She's dancing, chatting me up. She asked me, she hadn't seen me there before, gave the same story. I'm from here, live in the United States now, first time back, and everybody tells me that Canadian girls are prettier, so I had to come in and check. That was the line I'd been preparing since I first found out the place was a strip club. Totally worked. She was totally flattered by it. So we're sitting there, and I have to point out that before we began, she took out a hand towel and placed it across my lap. Like, okay. The girl then proceeds to dance. And it was the grindiest dance I've ever had at a strip club. And then it got a bit handsy. And I'm like, trying to be cool, but at the same time, I'm already making jokes. I have her laughing the whole time. She thinks it's funny. And I'm sitting there and I make a comment along the lines of, boy, people sure are friendlier in Canadian clubs. And something like that. And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, in the United States, this much physical contact is really a no-no. It's mostly illegal. So that's why I got my hands on the back of the couch. And she goes, oh, here in Canada, it's legal for you to touch. I'm like, excuse me? She goes, yeah, you're allowed to touch, just not between my legs. And in the back of my head, in that very moment, only one single thought came into my mind. Why the hell didn't I check out Judy's sooner? Why didn't somebody tell me it was not a restaurant, but it was still a buffet? Needless to say, the 3 dances I had were quite entertaining. I will mention that I was single at the time. I had not yet met my wife. I was not dating anyone. I do want to clear that out real quick. Okay? Fixing that out. 100% single at this opportunity. It ends. I leave. I come home. I hear not too far down the road later, a few months after I was there, the place kind of got shut down because people were getting caught doing stuff behind the building for more money. That was not okay. But yeah, in Canada, physical contact is legal as long as the dancer is okay with it and approves of it ahead of time. Blown away. Blown away. But that was my Judy's story from Canada. And it was a pleasure to share it with you all. Again, not as funny as some of my other stories, but man.